Hey, what's up, garden friends? How's everybody doing? I hope you're good. I am great. I've been out here fidgeting with some of my house plants. Really, I mean, they're not actually in my house, they're in my grow room, but still, typical house plants. I have my Alocasia here, a pothos in the back, Sansevieria, Ephelendra. I'm going through, getting off some leaves that are a little bit dried up and had some damage, so trying to get some dust cleaned off the foliage, and, well, that's all really neither here nor there. I started thinking about my Alocasia amazonica, or Alocasia Polly. This is a pretty common Alocasia. I see it all over the place, and there have been a lot of people who have kind of asked me about it and said, hey, I like this, I've grown it, and it just keeps dying. What gives? So let's talk about it. I was thinking about maybe doing a repot on mine, but I haven't fully decided yet, because this really isn't the appropriate time of year for that. However, it is in active growth. I know this because, well, it keeps putting up new little baby leaves. See the baby leaf in there? Yeah, they're still doing its thing. It's not always typical for these during the winter time. In fact, it's fairly atypical. Touch back more on that in a minute. For starters, the name on this Alocasia, very misleading. It's not from the Amazon. This is a hybrid. The parentage of this hybrid is somewhat unknown. There's some guesses out there as to what the parents might be, but it's not for certain. The name likely comes from the nursery where this hybrid came from, which was like down in southern Florida, and it was like called the Amazon Nursery, something like that. I don't know for sure. But basically, this is not, none of the Alocasias are from South America, so that tells you right there that that name's not a species. This is a hybrid. Don't know who her parents are, but still a hybrid. Sometimes called Alocasia Polly. They have these beautiful elongated leaves on them. The shapes vary a little bit. Very, very glossy and shiny, and nice deep green with a more white to creamy colored vein that runs across the top. And what they're really known for is this lovely purple to maroon color that's on the underside of the foliage. Isn't that beautiful? Absolutely gorgeous. You see the details and the veining and everything in there? It's just stunning. And this Alocasia can also be kind of a jerk. Okay, I went ahead and cleared the top of my table off a little bit, just because I decided I was going to repot this while I talk about the plant, and then talk about why you maybe should or should not repot this during the wintertime like I'm doing right now. Now this guy, okay, it's just going to lift right out of there, alright? See, I hadn't actually potted this in here yet. This is still in its nursery pot. But right now, we'll just go ahead and set that back in there. And you can see a lot of the care requirements are listed right here on the pot, but what they don't tell you are the eccentricities of this plant. It says on here, high light, 3 to 4 hours of indirect light. Okay, pretty much true. Medium water, temperature, keep above 50 degrees, also true. Fertilize every 2 to 4 months. Yeah, sort of. They can only get so specific on a plant label, right? So here's the deal with this Alocasia. This Alocasia is one that really likes warm temperatures. It doesn't need a lot of bright direct light. It'll cook actually in full sun. 60 to 80% shade will even do fine for these guys. Dappled light is really fantastic, but indoor culture is different than outdoor culture. Outdoor light is much different than indoor light. And if you grow this outdoors year-round, chances are your climate's very, very, very different. And the sun's probably more intense too, because you're likely closer to the equator, since the temperatures are above 50 degrees all year. So, if you live, say, South Florida, somewhere like that, this would be a great plant to have as an understory plant, where the leaves from the tree will filter the sun and it'll do well under there. Nice, well-drained soil. This is not a plant that likes to dry out for a long time. Keep in mind, I'm talking about its active growth right now. As a house plant, care is always going to be a little bit different when you have something inside versus outside. And I'm talking normal indoor conditions, not say in a sunroom or in a giant plastic bubble that's heated that you've constructed in your garage. That's relatable, right? Probably not. Anyways, typical indoor care with this plant. East-facing window, as close to the window as possible, where it is going to get that bright light. This is not a plant where you can go stick it in a corner in just a bright room. Typically, it's not going to do very well in a situation like that. However, if your house is like mine and your windows are extremely drafty, then you have to take caution during the winter time. This is not a plant that I would put right next to my windows during the winter time because, like I just said, they're very drafty and it gets very cold outside. If this is receiving nighttime temperatures in the 40s and that soil's wet, then the leaves are going to start to yellow, fall off, and one of two things are going to happen. It's going to start to rot and die, or it's going to go into a dormancy. The dormancy would be more triggered by a dry period, though. In the wintertime in the house, I would not be watering this as frequently. It'd be best to make sure that the top inch, maybe 2 inches of soil dries out completely in between waterings. To be sure whether or not that's happening, you can use something like a wooden kebab skewer, a popsicle stick, something like that. Stick that down into the soil as far as you possibly can. Give that a few minutes, pull it up, and you'll be able to see where that stick is moist versus dry, and you'll be able to get an idea of whether I need to water it. What I find to be a lot easier is you just take one of your fingers, stick it down there into the soil, and you can feel whether or not it's dry or not. Sometimes you can tell just from looking at it as well. Oh, in the winter when you have this inside, a very, very, very bright window, but you don't want it to cook all day long in the sun. Will kill it, it'll scorch it out. But as much light as you can give it without cooking, that's why an east-facing window is kind of a good idea, because it's not going to be sitting in the sun all day long. It'll get some nice morning light, and it'll be faded throughout the rest of the day. These guys do well with that. Warmth is a huge factor as well. Sometimes your typical household temperatures of like 68 to 72 may just not cut it for these guys, at least to keep them in super, super active growth. Out here, my grow space temperatures are typically, I'd say 75 to 82, though it does vary depending on how cold it is outdoors. Lately, though, I've been able to keep it pretty toasty in here, and that's why I'm getting a good amount of growth down here. Essentially, I'm not really worried about mine hitting a dormancy. If you have a very bright bathroom, do well in there because there's more humidity. Humidity is extremely important. Low humidity will cause the tips to start browning, the leaves will start to brown and drop off. There are lots of different ways to handle low humidity when it comes to house plants. The tray with pebbles underneath it works well, but make sure that the water is below the pebbles so it's not in direct contact with that. These are plants that like water, but they don't want to be sitting in water, especially indoors where temperatures are cooler. I mean, outdoors too, but especially indoors with cooler temperatures. It'll just rot and die. Keep it above those pebbles. This isn't a plant where I would say to mist it. If you are going to mist, then mist the top of the soil. Have some rocks or something on there, and that can help with the humidity. Misting the foliage can cause problems with a lot of house plants. There are only a few that I recommend that with. This isn't one of them. One of the best ways to go... Has this been here the entire time? Oh, wow. I'm so sorry if it has. Sometimes one of the best ways to go with a plant that likes a lot of humidity is to just get a humidifier. It can do the trick really well too. One of my favorite things to do, though, is to go ahead and cluster it with other plants. Having them set up with other plants around them helps hold in humidity. Plants transpire, they release moisture, and that will stay within that surrounding areas. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and repot this guy. This isn't really a how to repot this plant sort of video. That's partially because it's a pretty easy plant to repot. It's not rocket science to repot these guys. Make sure there's a nice drainage hole in the bottom of the pot. I don't always put gravel or anything like that in the bottom of my pots. I may with this one just to kind of lift it up a little bit. The reason for that is because the Alocasia amazonica, or Alocasia Polly, whatever you want to call it, they do somewhat well with more of a confined root space. So I don't want to overpot this, particularly since it's wintertime, and I really shouldn't be repotting it, but I know it's okay since, as I keep mentioning, it's in active growth, and it seems to be steady that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. Like I said, though, very simple and easy. I'm just putting a little bit of rock in the bottom there. You should always rinse that out first. I obviously didn't do that. And pouring a little bit of an all-purpose potting soil in here to start things off. All right, that was out of frame. I'm so sorry. Spoma Biotone Starter. Great stuff. Let me put maybe a tablespoon of that in there. It's good because it gets things going down around the roots of the plant, gets bacteria going, fungus, all beneficial forms, that is, types that help break things down, release nitrogen, encourage healthy root growth. It's good stuff. I can see from looking at the roots here, this really, it doesn't need much loosening up. I'll go ahead and just very lightly run my hand around it. It's not really root bound, so I'm not too concerned about that. Oh, why does it always go out of focus when my hands are dirty and I can't adjust my lens? One thing I will say when it comes to potting these up is that since they don't like to be in a dry soil mixture, clay pots aren't always a great idea. Plastic or something that is glazed works better for holding in moisture around those roots. If you live somewhere with really dry conditions, doing a top dressing with some gravel or even like an orchid bark, that works really well to help keep the soil from drying out too quickly also. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that with this one, and honestly that's just because I think it'll look pretty. Not really fully necessary with my setup, but it's going to look nice, so I'm going to do it. I put a little top dressing in here of that Biotone Starter. I like to put those fertilizers or amendments in the lower portion and the top portion. That way when you water it in, it can work its way down and around the roots of the plant. Oops, lost the leaf. I need to be more gentle. Here I'm just using the marble nuggets. I used these in a video, I don't know, not too terribly long ago where I potted up some, what were they, roadkill cactus as a gift for one of my friends. I have some left over, and I think that this nice shiny white rock is going to go well with the blue pot. There we go. I think that looks nice. And this will need to be watered in. I'm going to wait to do that just because I'm kind of surrounded by filming equipment. I can't really get up. But just a typical first time watering. I'm going to water it heavily until the water runs out the bottom of the pot. I'll wait to make sure that it's done dripping. I'll do it again. I'll wait till it's done dripping, and then I'll do it again 3 times over. Really nice heavy soak, help push all the soil into place, and really should be done before you top dress it with gravel because there could be air pockets or something like that. I did pack the soil down fairly well though. Oh, back to what I was saying. Indoors, they appreciate a nice, bright, warm location with high humidity. And in the winter months, if temperatures are not fairly warm, like mid-70s, then let the top inch or so of the soil dry out in between waterings. If you let it dry out too long, it'll go into a dormancy, which isn't the end of the world. However, if you water it too often, then it will rot and die. So that's why I've said that Alocasia amazonica, kind of a jerk. Something so popular and common, man, they really can be a pain for a lot of people. I don't know if I were to actually keep this in my house and not out here in my grow space, I don't know how well I would do with it either. The temperature's a lot cooler in my house. I don't have a lot of bright light for it in the morning time. The east side of my house, there really isn't any place to put it in the window. Other windows, the guard windows, are more southern facing, so I think that it would actually cook in those windows, and as I mentioned, they're very drafty, so it would likely just be way too cold for it. Fertilizing. As far as fertilizing is concerned, the reason when I was reading that pot and it said like every 2 to 4 months and it didn't really go into any more detail than that, and I was like, maybe, that's because in the winter months, I don't really fertilize this plant. Now, I did put that Espoma Biotone starter in there. That's helping encourage nice root growth, and again, like I mentioned, temperatures are pretty warm out here. This isn't really going through a dormancy like it would in the house. And they don't necessarily go into a full dormancy in the house, I shouldn't have said it like that, but more of a slower growth period. A growth period where sometimes you will notice that the stems leading to these leaves get elongated and leggy. The leaves start to droop and hang because the plant doesn't really have the health going on with it. Stand upright. As things happen, move it to a brighter location. Check the soil, see if it's sopping wet. If it's sopping wet, get it dried out. With yellowing leaves, that's something to check for. On the flip side with plants, it's also the opposite can be true, that it can just be too dry. So check the moisture, check the light, pay attention to humidity, and I would not fertilize if this is not in a very, very, very warm situation where you can tell. Like with mine, you can see in the bottom, as I keep pointing out, it's in active growth. And just because it's putting up a new leaf doesn't mean that it's in the type of active growth to go ahead and repot it and fertilize it. This has tons of new growth in it that has all popped out within the last couple weeks here. 1 or 2 leaves every month doesn't really justify fertilizing and saying that it's in a super active growth. Another thing with all houseplants is to make sure that the foliage is clean. It's important to check for dust, keep the foliage clean. If the foliage does get dusty, like I can kind of see this foliage over here is a little bit dusty. Not really, I think those are hard water spots, but it's the same difference with the point I'm about to make, which is that dust, hard water stains, any of those things form a layer that blocks light from getting in. Plants need that light to photosynthesize, for there to be energy, for them to have the energy to take up nutrients and keep growing. So want to make sure that foliage doesn't get too dusty. And it's easy enough to clean off. Just use some lukewarm water in a bowl with a drop of a natural dish soap, and then just wipe them clean. And sometimes after that, I'll go over and give them a quick rinse and pat them dry, just because I have very hard water, and leaving hard water spots isn't really any better than having dust. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything, sort of in a haphazardous kind of way. You know, sitting down having a plant chat. I guess I could get into some of the more common things. They can get up to 3 feet tall, though I've never seen that, but that's what the majority of the web says. And all the stuff that I read off to on the tag, medium light. I prefer to give these guys a little bit of morning light with filtered dappled light throughout the rest of the day. Hardy 50 degrees and up. I would think this might be okay in 9B perhaps, but really lower than that, cold temperatures may cause them to drop into a dormancy. We may need to go ahead and dig up the plant, bring it inside. Oh, and she's poisonous. Not only is this a very finicky, jerky butthead kind of plant, but yes, it will also make your pets, plants, children very sick. Wait, I say plants? No, your plants aren't going to eat this. No, your pets and children. Why did I say? I don't know what that was about. That's how I know it's time to stop talking. All right, well, I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for hanging out while I sit down, nerd out, talk about one of my favorite of the little Alocasias to keep inside the house. A very common Alocasia that causes problems for an awful lot of people. Don't fret over it though. A lot of people kill them. Don't worry. It's all right. You haven't failed at killing a plant until you've given up at trying to keep the plant alive. So give it another shot if it hasn't worked out for you. I mean, not if you have babies or pets that want to eat it though. I didn't tell you to do that. Don't be stupid. Again, let me know what's been going on with your Alocasia amazonica, Alocasia Polly. Comment down below or hit me up on Instagram at Tropical Plant Party. All my social media is linked in the description down below. Follow me and I'll follow you back. It's a good way to connect with me. I have fun talking with everybody on there. Oh, and don't forget to leave the video a thumbs up. It helps a ton, lets me know I'm doing a good job, so I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And subscribe as well. I upload multiple times a week, so don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way you know when new videos come out. All right, everybody. Think I have gone on long enough about this very intricate and beautiful plant. Oh, that's pretty. Look how the light's reflecting onto the bottom of... That's the other thing. I love the glossy foliage. I mean, I think everybody does. That's why it's so popular. Okay, anyways, I hope everybody's doing well. And as always, most importantly, keep on growing.